What is the worst business idea I've seen someone try to execute? In 2011 we had THE Norwegian butter crisis in Norway. The shortage caused soaring prices and store stocks of butter ran out within minutes of deliveries. A pack of butter would sell for between $40 to $200 on the BLACKMARKET. A friend got the idea to drive over to the neighboring country, Sweden, to buy butter and sell it here in Norway. The problem was that you could only carry 100 packets of butter across the Norwegian border. So he made a deal with our local nursing home. He rented a bus and took 20 elderly people on a road trip to Sweden in exchange for receiving the butter quota. The next day, the butter crisis suddenly resolved, and he was left with 2,000 packets of butter he could not sell. He still got his basement full of butter. An old local pub legend, friend of mine, £1 400k-ish, around $500k at the time, on the lottery. So, he decides to buy two tanning salons opposite each other, thinking that he had an instant monopoly. But the problem came when he started getting them to compete with one another. The managers at each salon began a pricing war, and he was broke in 6 months. Can't believe no one mentioned that guy who went on Shark Tank to pitch a Bluetooth earpiece that you got surgically implanted in your ear canal that you charged by sticking a needle in your ear while you slept. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to open a dance club in my northern Canadian city with a dress code. 90% of the population is tradesmen and miners who only own Carhartts and Hivas. Needless to say, it shut down within 6 months. Top for me has got to be a client of a design firm I used to work at. He was a trucker, his wife was a trucker. He wanted to make a sanitary pad that wouldn't need to be changed. Imagine a pad with a little line running down to a micro vacuum strapped to your leg, exhausting into another leg bag. Basically a pad that sucks the juices into a bag you can chuck in the trash later. Edit. Just to be clear, this was specifically a menstrual pad you are meant to wear for days at a time. Edit 2. Lots of your la mentioning the PureWick. The challenge this one would have had to solve was passing chunky menstrual blood, ladies you know what's up, through a tiny tube. If you're wondering how they solved it, they didn't, lol. Also, here's another good one. One client wanted a vape that just blew pot smoke into the air for the purpose of hotboxing his car. He had money, so hey. One of the engineers designed a little turbine, like a small turbocharger, the size of a cherry. Damn if it didn't work way too well, but the high-pitched screeching noise that turbine made, sheesh. Bless my friend, she had good intentions, but she wanted to start basically her own library system where people ordered and rented used books through the mail. And they had to return them and pay for shipping and the rental. Where she would store the books, I had no idea. It obviously flopped within weeks, but hey, she tried something, which is more than I can say for myself. In high school, a guy I knew tried to sell pirated copies of Adobe programs. How did he obtain the pirated copies? He dragged the desktop icons from the school computers onto a USB stick. A lady opened a Southern soul food buffet in my city. It was incredible. Amazing food. On some days, it was a buffet with a rotating menu depending on the day of the week, and those days were not equal. So what happened was people would go on an off day, be unimpressed, not come back, or come on one of the better days, love it, come back on an off day, then never come back. I was so disappointed. I would donate towards reopening that restaurant, but with only the optimal menu every day. That woman has serious culinary talent. In my college town there was a cereal restaurant. Why make a bowl of cereal at home when you can pay $5 for someone else to do it? Not surprisingly, it closed soon after opening. We have a small time theme park in my state called Evermore, and they thought it would be a good idea to try and sue Taylor Swift over her album of the same name. There was a bar that opened up in my city and their entrance was hidden. They did a news story and they refused to tell the paper where it was actually located. To Everiono's complete surprise, they only stayed open for a couple of weeks. In my country there was a guy who used to sell wood. The problem was he did not have any of it. So he would ask for payment and then not give the product afterwards, hoping that procrastination and time will make the problem go away. He did 4 years in jail. My schoolmate at high school wanted to be a club manager. He organized a concert where he invited kinda famous foreign band to the local club. He paid so much money for them just to arrive plus their expenses at the bar. In the end like 20 people showed up, half of them were his friends. Fortunately he had a very rich dad, so he paid for that and life went on. The dude started selling art next day. No need to say he failed miserably again. Father-in-law drove 18 hours down to Florida to catch shrimp, filled his tiny car with tons of the shrimp and drove back. It took days to vacuum, seal the shrimp that hadn't gone bad, only to sell a few bags to some friends. The car smelled like seafood for years. In about 2005 my friend's dad tried to start an arcade in a small town, just outside walking distance from a school using beat up second-hand machines. To get there from the schoolyard have to walk by an established, larger arcade that also sold food. Edit for the actually crowd. I guess it was walking distance, just not a convenient walking distance. Sorry for poor wording. Context: I live in Las Vegas. When I was in my 20s, I was hired by a man who wanted to build ************* for **********. His goal was for the men on the site to pay him to follow their favorite strippers and know what clubs they were dancing at and when. He shut the project down after months of paying me when he found out that no stripper would sign up for it. One of the younger dudes in my karate class was going to start a handyman business 24H, anything needing to be done anywhere in our district. Sounds good. You gonna get a loan and buy a used truck and get some tools, and you never have talk time on your phone, so will you get a landline? 2006, so not super outlandish? No, I'll go on my bicycle and I'll just use the tools they have, and they can email me when they need service. Right, because when I have water spraying out of my geyser through the ceiling at 3 AM I'm going to email a dude on a bicycle to come fix it using all the tools and the ladder I don't own. A digital camera that looks like a classic Japanese 35mm point and shoot. The memory card, which looks like a 35mm film roll and only has space for 36 images, has to be sent away like in the old days to get developed into prints that are mailed back a week later. It is / was on Kickstarter. There was a guy in my town that opened a business that was the equivalent of a brick and mortar version of Craigslist or newspaper classified ads. It was a unit in a strip mall with bulletin boards. You paid to put an ad up and other people came to look at the ads with a small picture. This was after Craigslist existed, not some pre-internet thing. There was no actual merchandise in the store, just crappy pictures of stuff with the contact info. It was not even a high foot traffic location. You had to maneuver through a busy intersection, park and go inside to look at a bulletin board. It went under, and he tried to blame the landlord because he could not get a sign permit for the end of the building, even though he had 2 other signs. When I was in high school, one of my friends wanted to start a little coffee shop / hot chocolate stand with a cuddle corner and free hugs for anyone who wants them. She offered jobs to our other friends, X. The idea was that this little business would be operated and staffed by high schoolers. She failed to see the issue with having 16-year-old girls required give free hugs to customers or having to staff the cuddle corner. Guy I know got a small inheritance, enough for a deposit on a unit or small house. Nope. Seahorse farm. Turns out seahorses are difficult to breed. Someone in Edmonton, Canada opened a dairy store, milk and cheese, and placed it across the street from a large grocery store. He hoped that shoppers would buy everything they needed at the grocery store, except their milk and cheese, which the grocery store had ample supply of, and make another trip to their store for milk and cheese. It didn't last. Edit. Wow, I woke up to a whole lot of responses. Many people brought up specialty places, butcher shops, artisanal stores, etc., which yes, can be a great thing. The place I'm talking about just supplied the same big dairy milk at the same prices, and no fancy cheese. It was only really convenient when you only needed a carton of milk and didn't want to deal with a huge parking lot and the hassle of a massive store. But like I said, it didn't last long at all. A loudmouth drunk, supposedly an ex-NFL player from way back, opened a Orefanoyo pizza place across the street from the small town old favorite Ora Normolo pizza place. It was a pretty obvious attempt to put the old place out of business and corner the lucrative small town pizza market. The owner of the new place would get hammered and walk around to random tables to schmoz. He would loudly hit on the ladies in front of their dates. It had really good pizza, but it was horribly overpriced and the portions were tiny. It went out of business pretty quickly. Monthly sex toy subscription. You would get a different sex toy each month, which is an okay idea I guess. There's one of those for everything nowadays, but the only problem this guy had is that he wanted the customers to eventually return the toy, so he could pass it on to the next customer. He actually got in talks with an owner of a local sex shop to help him start, but the enthusiasm flattened out quite quickly.